You are being taxed for the basic right to exist in the light. Every 30 days, a document arrives at your door, a mandatory utility bill. It is a fee for a service that the Earth provides for free. The energy industry has spent over a century conditioning you to believe that power is a complex, manufactured commodity that must travel through hundreds of miles of fragile wires they control. They have turned a fundamental force of the universe into a recurring debt. But look closer at the logic of the grid. It is not a miracle of engineering, it is a masterpiece of dependency. If the wires go down, you go dark. If you stop paying, they cut the current. You are a digital hostage to a switch you do not own. In the restricted archives of the late 19th century, I found the dead files of 1893, the year the energy industry chose profit over freedom. The truth they buried is simple. The ground beneath your feet is not just dirt. It is a massive, self-replenishing bioelectric capacitor. The luxury trap. The system tells you that renewable energy is a $30,000 investment. They want you to believe you need high-tech solar panels from China and massive lithium batteries to be independent. This is the luxury trap. By making independence expensive, they ensure it remains out of reach for the average citizen. They want you to think that free energy is science fiction, a fringe theory for the paranoid. However, the laws of physics do not care about corporate balance sheets. The Earth is a giant battery, and the soil is its electrolyte. I have analyzed the chemical composition of soil from the Appalachian Mountains to the European plains. It is teeming with ionic flow, an endless stream of electrons waiting for a conductor. The Ionic Secret. In 1944, a declassified military intelligence report detailed field expedient power. When communication lines were severed during the war, operatives didn't use noisy generators. They used the soil. By placing two dissimilar metals into the moist earth, they created a galvanic reaction that could power telegraphs and radio receivers indefinitely. It was silent. It was invisible, and most importantly, it was free. They want you to fear the darkness so they can sell you the light. They want you to stay connected to their smart meters so they can track your every watt. But as I will show you in the following chapters, the secret to ending your energy debt isn't found in a Green New Deal. It is found in the history they tried to erase. The archives are open. The grid is about to become irrelevant. History is not written by the victors. It is written by the owners of the printing presses. And in 1893, the men who owned the presses were the same men building the massive centralized electrical grids across the American landscape. While the war of the currents between Tesla and Edison was being fought in the headlines, a man named Nathan Stubblefield was quietly performing the impossible in rural Kentucky. He wasn't using massive dynamos or burning mountains of coal. He simply drove two dissimilar metal rods into the moist earth behind his farmhouse. The result? A steady, constant flow of electricity that pulled directly from the ground. He lit his entire farm and transmitted wireless audio signals miles away, decades before the official invention of the radio. He called it the Earth Battery. But in the internal memos of the emerging energy syndicates, they called it an existential threat. The geometry of free current. Why does dirt hold power? Modern physics textbooks will tell you about the galvanic effect, but they will strategically omit its true potential. The soil is a massive living electrolyte. When you place two electrodes with different electronegativity, specifically copper, Cu, and zinc, Zn, into this medium, a potential difference is created. The electrons begin to move.
The Earth is not just for growing crops, it is a reservoir of suspended ions, perpetually ready to be harvested. Stubblefield discovered that by arranging these metals in a specific spiral geometry, he could amplify this natural current to a level capable of running basic machinery and lighting. The erasure of the truth. In 1898, Stubblefield was granted patent number 600457, but within weeks, investors from the industrial north arrived at his doorstep. They didn't want to manufacture his device, they wanted to buy the patent to ensure it was never commercialized.
Stubblefield was a man of principle. He refused to sell out the future of humanity, and that was when the machinery of suppression began to turn. The archives show a systematic campaign to label him a madman and a fraud in the newspapers. He retreated into the woods, living in isolation and dying in poverty in 1928. When his body was found, his most detailed blueprints had vanished. His home had been ransacked. The Earth battery was officially deleted from the mainstream historical record to make way for the era of utility meters and monthly bills. The system wants you to believe that energy is scarce and difficult to produce. They want you to look at the soil and see only dirt rather than an infinite reservoir of power. Why? Because you cannot put a meter on the planet. You cannot charge a man for a current he pulls from his own garden. But Stubblefield left a trail, a simple formula that anyone can replicate for under $5 today. The energy industry didn't just bury the Earth battery, they replaced it with a more profitable alternative. Today, you're being sold a new dream, green energy. They tell you that by installing $30,000 worth of silicon panels on your roof and $10,000 worth of lithium blocks in your garage, you are finally independent. This is the second enclosure. It is a sophisticated pivot designed to move you from one high-cost dependency to another, while ensuring you never realize that the ground beneath your feet is already surging with free current. The grid-tied trap. Look closely at the incentives offered by utility companies for solar installation. They insist on grid-tied systems. They tell you it's so you can sell power back to the grid, but look at the fine print. In most jurisdictions, if the main power grid goes down, your expensive solar system is programmed to shut off automatically. They call it a safety feature for repairmen. I call it a remote kill switch. Even with $40,000 of equipment on your roof, you are still a prisoner of their switch. If you don't pay your connection fee, they can digitally sever your access to your own generated power. They have successfully moved the meter from the coal plant to your own roof, ensuring that independence remains a subscription service. The rare earth monopoly. The industry pushes solar and lithium because they control the supply chain. Solar panels require rare earth minerals, neodymium, indium, gallium, mined in remote regions under corporate monopoly. Lithium batteries require cobalt and high-grade lithium carbonate. You cannot DIY a solar cell in your backyard. You must buy it from them. The Earth battery, however, uses the most common metals on the planet, copper and zinc. You can find the materials for a functioning power cell in a scrapyard or a hardware store for less than $5. This is why it was erased. You cannot monopolize a technology made of scrap metal and dirt. The maintenance cycle. Solar panels degrade. Efficiency drops every year. Batteries have a finite number of cycles before they become toxic waste. The industry loves the maintenance cycle because it guarantees you will return to the market in 10 to 15 years. The Earth battery is different. It is a geological engine. As long as the soil is moist and the minerals are present, the ionic flow continues. It doesn't wear out like a chemical battery. It simply exists as part of the Earth's natural electrical circuit. In the 1920s, experimental Earth batteries were found still producing a steady current decades after they were buried, with zero maintenance. I analyzed a 2012 internal white paper from a major energy conglomerate. They admitted that if 10% of households moved to localized soil-based microgrids, the centralized utility model would collapse within 5 years. They aren't fighting climate change, they are fighting consumer autonomy. They want you to believe that the only way to save the planet is to buy their expensive high-tech hardware. They want you to stay within a system where they define the cost of your survival. But the archives prove that the most green energy in existence is the one they tried to make you forget. Are you ready to stop being a customer and start being a producer? The archives of 1893 were not buried because the technology failed. They were buried because it was too simple to control. To build your own grid killer, you don't need a factory. You need two common metals and the moisture of the earth. The energy industry wants you to believe that electricity is a complex manufacturing process. In reality, it is a natural exchange that happens every second beneath your boots. The materials, the $5 procurement. To replicate Nathan Stubblefield's free current, you do not go to a specialty electronics store. You go to a scrapyard or a hardware store. 1. The cathode, copper. A 12-inch piece of copper water pipe or a coil of thick copper wire. Copper is the hungry metal. It wants the electrons. 2. The anode, zinc. A galvanized steel rod or large galvanized nails. The zinc coating is the donor. It provides the flow. 3. The electrolyte, your own backyard soil. The higher the mineral and moisture content, the faster the ionic flow. The spiral geometry protocol. Stubblefield's 1898 patent revealed a secret that modern earth battery hobbyists often miss: surface area. If you just stick 2 rods in the ground, you get a trickle. If you use the spiral method, you create a vortex of energy. 1. The core. Take your zinc rod. 2. The wrap. Wrap your copper wire around the zinc rod in a tight spiral, but crucially, you must ensure the 2 metals do not touch. Use a thin layer of organic cotton or even a plastic mesh as an insulator between them. 3. The burial. Dig a hole 2 feet deep. The deeper you go, the more stable the moisture and the higher the geomagnetic pressure. Place your cell vertically. The electrolytic prime. To jumpstart the ions, do not wait for the next rain. Mix a solution of 1 part white vinegar to 10 parts water and pour it directly onto the buried cell. This mild acid creates a galvanic bridge, dissolving the microscopic oxidation on the metals and allowing the current to surge immediately. Scaling the grid. A single cell will provide roughly 0.8 to 1.2 volts. To the experts, this is useless. To the independent mind, this is a building block. By connecting 10 of these 50-cent cells in a series circuit, linking the copper of one to the zinc of the next, bypassing the earth between them, you create a 12-volt power plant. I have seen archives from 1920s experimental farms where these soil grids ran low-wattage lighting and telegraphy systems for years without a single penny paid to a utility company. They tell you it doesn't scale for a whole house. They're half right. It doesn't scale for a 3,000-square-foot mansion with 3 air conditioners. But for survival, for emergency lighting, for charging your $5 Faraday devices, it is more reliable than any grid on Earth. They call it dirt. I call it the sovereign generator. Are you ready for the final vault? In Part 5, I will reveal the manifesto of the soil, how to maintain your Earth battery for decades, and the forbidden hint for our next investigation, the $2 water hack that pulls unlimited drinking water from thin air, a secret the plumbing cartels spent $100 million to keep out of the headlines. The archives of 1893 are finally open, and the door to the grid is closing behind you. By building a soil-based microgrid, you have done more than just generate a few volts of electricity. You have committed an act of economic secession. The energy industry relies on your belief that you are a consumer, a passive recipient of their controlled current. But once you pull power from the ground, you become a producer. You are no longer a customer. You are a sovereign entity. The maintenance of sovereignty. The experts will tell you that Earth batteries are temporary because of oxidation. They are partially correct. Over time, the zinc will sacrifice itself to provide the electrons, and the copper will develop a patina that slows the flow. In a corporate-led world, this is a failure. In our world, it is a maintenance cycle. 1. The flush. Once every 6 months, flush the soil around your cells with a light saline solution, 1 tablespoon of sea salt per gallon of water. This refreshes the ion count and breaks down the calcification on the metal surfaces. 2. The rod refresh. Every 24 months, pull the rods. Clean the copper with a simple abrasive, sandpaper, and replace the zinc rod if it is thinned. The cost to refuel your entire grid is less than $2. Compare that to the $2,000 you would pay a utility company in the same period. 3. The biological boost. Plant high mineral vegetation, like clover or alfalfa, directly over your burial site. Their root systems act as natural pumps, pulling minerals from the deep subsoil and concentrating them around your electrodes. The manifesto of the soil. The industry wants you to think big. They want megagrids, nuclear plants, and global energy markets. Why? Because big systems require big control. They cannot control a million small, independent Earth batteries scattered in backyards. True independence is found in microsystems. A 12-volt soil circuit won't run a factory, but it will keep your communications open, your Faraday shields charged, and your emergency lights burning when the main grid inevitably falters. It is a slow, steady, and unstoppable current. I have analyzed the internal projections of the 2030 energy transition. They aren't planning for your freedom. They're planning for a smart grid where your usage is capped and your access is a privilege. By learning to pull power from the Earth, you have opted out of their future. You have reclaimed the 19th century dream that the industrial giants spent 100 years trying to kill. The next archive, the $2 water hack. But energy and shelter are only two legs of the tripod. The final, most guarded secret concerns the very fluid of life. The plumbing cartels and bottled water giants have spent $100 million to ensure you believe that clean water must come from a pipe or a plastic bottle. They have buried the 1940s atmospheric condensation blueprints, a simple $2 mechanical trick that allows you to pull gallons of pure distilled drinking water directly from thin air, even in the driest climates. I have found the dew point files. In our next session, I will show you how to build a vortex well for the price of a cup of coffee. The Earth battery file is now sealed and placed back in the vault. I am Professor Lawrence, and this knowledge is now yours.